Welcome to the Transportation Sales Tax Program, also known as RoadWise. We think that the program today is going to be very interesting for you. It has to do with right-of-way acquisition, and what that means we'll tell you in just a little bit. You're going to meet a gentleman who has been with LPA Baker for a number of years, especially with LPA, and he is the gentleman who one would talk with if we need to buy additional property so that a road can be built. We'll talk about that and more in just a moment, so please don't go away.
Hey, Charleston County, let's recycle. Charleston County makes it easy. Recycling glass, aluminum cans, steel and aerosol cans, plastics 1 to 7. We recycle them all. And don't forget paper. If it tears, recycle it. Even cardboard. Recycle at work, at home, and at play. So whether you're using the 2 curbside bin system and separating or the all-in-one roll cart system, keep recycling. Brought to you by Charleston County Environmental Management.
Welcome back to our program. As promised, we're going to be talking about right-of-way acquisition or purchases. It's a service that's provided to the county of Charleston, and it's done by a few people. And what they do is they try to make sure that the county has enough property in order to build a road or construct a road or remodel or redo a road. It has to do with someone being out there who can deal with the public as it has to do with property. And I'd like you to meet my guest. He is Director of Right-of-Way Services, Oscar Rucker. Welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl.
It's nice having you here.
Pleasure to be here.
I keep talking about right-of-way acquisition. What is a right-of-way?
Right-of-way is property owned typically by a government entity, but in some cases it's owned by power companies, utility companies, in order to, in our case, build roads. In the utility company's case, to move power, water, sewer, those type of things.
Would that be the front of somebody's yard where these utilities have been planted?
In most cases,
and is that considered right-of-way?
In most cases, the right-of-way is along the front of someone's yard. Utilities can go in the front or the back. You know,
what disturbs me about it is sometimes the public will plant trees and bushes and fences on what appears to have been the right-of-way. Is that a good idea? I mean, what do you advise the public to do?
Typically, it's not a good idea to go out there and plant bushes because if the government needs to use their property, they have the right to use it without compensating someone for that shrubbery and planting that has been put out there.
Does the average person know that that is right-of-way that might be owned by a utilities company or by the government, the county or the city or whomever?
Probably in most cases they think they own to the edge of the pavement, but in reality the right-of-way typically will go out a varying distance from the edge of the pavement because you need area to cover your ditches and so forth.
When you're out there talking with the public, because there's a piece of property that's needed to widen the road before it's built, or what maybe for utilities and various other things that have to be done in order to make that project successful, do you have to deal with the public to a large extent, or do you usually know what you want and it's there for you?
We know what we want, and we're dealing with the individual owners who abut the project. So it's not the public in general, but it would be that landowner whose property is going to be affected. And our job is to go in, explain the project to them so that they understand what's going on and put them in a position where they can make decisions about the process.
Are they generally, the public that is, are they generally in shock? Do they know?
Typically they know the project is coming. They may not know what the impact is going to be and how it's going to affect them personally.
What is the response that you get when you say, I believe, or do you believe, or do you already have it mapped out? We're going to have to take, or we need to purchase.
When we get to the right-of-way process, it has been mapped out. So we know what is needed and how much, and it's a matter of going in and explaining, as I say, the project and its specific impacts to that individual owner.
Is there any way that we can repay or take care of in some way that person who's giving up that property? Or maybe in some instances, if they're really great citizens, they may want to give you that property.
Well, we do value the property that we're going to to need for a road widening project. It's either done through one of two methods, and one is a cost estimate whereby we have an appraiser estimate the value of the property that's going to be acquired. We can do that up to a limit. There's a limitation of $20,000. Anything below $20,000, we have the ability to begin negotiations based on that estimate. If it exceeds $20,000, then we would have the property appraised. And the appraisal would be a before and after situation. They evaluate the value of the property before the property is acquired and after, and the difference is what we would offer the owner.
And the owner apparently seems to be satisfied. I don't hear a lot from individuals.
Hopefully that
or do they just accept what's going on?
No, not in most cases. There are negotiations that take place, and we try and reach a consensus on what the value should be and resolve most of them.
Let's talk about that value for just a moment. I'm wondering, is it fair market value, or is it the value compared to something equivalent? How do you come to that determination?
That, like I say, we use appraisers, and appraisers are trying to establish the fair market value of the property. If you're taking small strips, as we typically do, then you're paying on typically a per square foot basis. The appraiser would establish the value of the property and then establish the square foot value and apply it to the property being purchased.
Is that property ever given to the county government?
There have been some instances where
Why
donations.
Would they do that?
Well,
it's not bad. It's just,
no, it's
I'm wondering.
not. It's not a bad thing. Donations don't occur very often, but typically when there's a donation, a person has the right to write it off from a tax standpoint. They may have made a commitment in order to get the project done, and therefore are following through on a commitment that was previously made.
Do you find that some people are concerned about being too close to the highway, or if a bicycle path is going in on the right-of-way that you're purchasing or whatever? Are they concerned about that at all, that they're getting a little too close?
The proximity of the right-of-way to someone's home is definitely one of the issues, and that's why when we go out and meet with owners, we try to have the right-of-way marked on the ground, either through staking or some type of painting, so that we can show the owners exactly where that right-of-way will come to.
There's something called heirs property, and there's property that's been left without any family member claiming it, or some family member claiming it, and the rest of them don't know anything about it. Do you run into that kind of thing periodically?
Yes, we do, and heirs property is nothing more than when someone has died and not left a will. And when you don't leave a will, the state prescribes who the property goes to.
Wow.
If it's a husband, it goes partially to his wife and to his children. Most people think that it would automatically transfer to the wife, but that's not the way it occurs here in South Carolina. And when you're dealing with a heirs property, what you're having to do is locate all of the heirs of the individual.
Some who may be in Maine and Florida and overseas. Does the judge or whomever makes this decision about whether or not it's heirs property and how much the family's entitled to, does that judge look at all of that information and say, listen, if we can get 3 people or 2, that's going to be it?
Well, we do the research and talk with the heirs that we can find and identify all of the heirs that we can. Unfortunately, with heirs property, the only way to get clear title to it is through a condemnation action. And you have to condemn in order to clear the title. So that money, and we still go through the same appraisal process to determine what the property is worth, that money is typically paid into the court, and the heirs have to apply to the court in order to get their share.
And apparently that happens, and happens successfully at times.
Absolutely.
And is there ever a case where nothing's going on, nothing's happening, family members won't make a decision, they don't want to come forward, or they want to hold out for more money, and those kinds of things that could tie up that property?
Well, that does happen, but like I say, with the heir situation, condemnation typically is necessary just to clear it up in case there's some unknown heir that you aren't able to find.
Let's talk when we come back from the break about how family members ought to handle this kind of situation. And I know that you're not an expert necessarily on heirs property, but I am interested in the fact that there are some people who may be in the way of a project, or their property is leaning towards the completion of a project because there's a certain width that's needed, or what have you, or the road or the pathway or the bicycle trail or what have you. What do you say to these people? I want to know your advice from the side of a gentleman who is there to try to assist the public, but sometimes there's no way to help. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Hey, Charleston County, let's recycle. Charleston County makes it easy. Recycling glass, aluminum cans, steel and aerosol cans, plastics 1 to 7. We recycle them all. And don't forget paper. If it tears, recycle it. Even cardboard. Recycle at work, at home, and at play. So whether you're using the 2 curbside bin system and separating, or the all-in-one roll cart system, keep recycling. Brought to you by Charleston County Environmental Management.
Welcome back to our program. It's the Charleston County Transportation Sales Tax Program, and it's all about roadwise as well as the county's effort to improve the infrastructure in our community. And as I spoke before, Oscar Rucker is our guest today, and he's involved in right-of-way acquisition. That's that tiny piece of land, or maybe bigger than that, that may lie very close to or is really right at a project's beginning or end, and it's your job to make sure that the design of that road can be completed, because the public deserves to have the highway built properly. And there are folks who own land and they've used up or taken the right of way, and I don't know if they had the knowledge that they were doing that or what, but it seems like somebody should have measured it out and made a decision that this is right away that belongs to the government or to utilities when the builder was building. But I guess that doesn't always happen.
Well, it typically does, but over years, people just kind of continue to maintain and use the right-of-way, so therefore they feel like they've got a right to continue to use it as a part of their yard or whatever. So that typically happens.
Do you suppose you're at a driveway, and a portion of that driveway has to be used, where the persons have come all the way out into the right-of-way. Is there any assistance for these individuals, or what's the recourse?
During construction, those driveways are tied back in. If for some reason a driveway has to be taken, then there's compensation typically considered by the appraiser for the loss of access to a piece of property from one road. We try not to landlock property in this state. We try and make sure we provide them access from our roadway system.
Let's go back to a moment on the heirs property. That concerns me. I don't know, it's just a small portion of the people you're working with are involved in this, some kind of heirs property, or a larger number? And if it is, it doesn't matter what the number is, I guess, but what can you say to them to avoid having difficulties within the family about this, with the government representatives about this? Is there any kind of advice you can give us?
The best advice I can give folks is to have a will, because without that will, your wishes won't be carried out as to what happens to your property. A will basically directs who the property is to go to, how it's to be used, how it's to be divided up. The heirs property is property that comes into being as a result of someone not having a will, and all of the heirs basically having some claim to a portion of the property.
How far down does that go? To cousins, first cousins, third cousins, a friend across the way who stayed with a woman for 25 years, or what?
It can include all of the above.
Oh my.
So it really depends on when the person died, who else may have died in the interim, and like I say, it can go from sons to daughters to their children and their children's children. So it can spread out quite significantly.
And it's a legal nightmare, from what I'm told.
Well, what you have to do basically is put together a family tree so that you can figure out who has an interest in the property.
Have you had to do that very often?
A few times.
But thank goodness not too often.
I usually have someone help me do that. Thank you.
Yeah. And the family is ready and willing to
In most cases, families are willing to provide you the information once you explain to them why you need it. And they will help you then in turn locate their relatives.
I'm sure this is not the case with any of the transportation sales tax projects, but I'm just wondering, is there a time when that property, the house on that property is so close, or maybe it could be split in half because the person has built on that portion of the right-of-way that is right in their living room? Do you move those houses?
We typically don't move the houses. When we're hitting someone's home, what we will do is pay them for that home, fair market value, and then there's an additional program that's available to those that are displaced by a highway project called relocation assistance. And that relocation assistance is to help move them into a decent, safe, and sanitary home somewhere else in the community. And what we will do is find comparable homes that are available for sale and use those in helping to come up with that relocation assistance.
Suppose I stubbornly decide that I don't want to move and I'm not going to move.
Unfortunately, you would have to.
And you're going to move me?
Or the courts. Me or the courts, yes ma'am. The state of South Carolina has an eminent domain procedures act, which allows the counties and the state to condemn property when necessary in order to make sure a public project can be completed.
And is there a lawyer involved on the side of the owner?
That depends on the owner. The owner has the right to go hire an attorney, but they're not required to.
When does bankruptcy come into play here?
I hope it never does. But bankruptcy is an individual's situation where they can't pay their bills and they've gone into bankruptcy. That's a federal issue. And typically when you're involved in a bankruptcy, there's a trustee that has been appointed by the federal court, and you have to deal with that trustee. The owner has no say-so at that point.
As you and I know, we're both in meetings and we're constantly hearing about projects that are soon to be implemented or built and the like. Have we had a situation where we just couldn't move in a timely manner because that property cannot be gotten? And that would include a business as well. And I'm wondering if businesses are treated differently. But what I'm going to do is just hold that as a teaser.
Okay.
And we'll be right back in a moment with the answers.
Hey, Charleston County, let's recycle. Charleston County makes it easy. Recycling glass, aluminum cans, steel and aerosol cans, plastics 1 to 7. We recycle them all. And don't forget paper. If it tears, recycle it. Even cardboard. Recycle at work,